When I first heard about synod and synodality, it wasn't a word that we use every day, but I thought as soon as I heard that this was something coming from our Holy Father, I thought, yeah, it's just like him. It's just like him to come up with this idea, especially after the conference in the Amazon.
Yes.
And when he went there, and it was clear that his posture in the Amazon with the bishops and the people there was that I'm here to listen.
Yes.
I'm here to listen. And so when I heard about synod and synodality, and of course the Synod of Bishops coming up in 2023, I thought, it's just like him. It's just like him. And what a perfect pastoral way to deal with your people is to say, sure, I could come here and just give you a sermon as I do in so many other places, or I could come here and say, just talk to me.
Yeah.
Just talk to me because I want to listen to you. What do you think?
Well, that's it. People say, what are the hopes of the outcome of this? It's the process. It's to teach us how to listen to each other, how to listen to church leaders, but also how to listen to those who don't have a voice, how to and give them a voice, how to listen to those that we use the words on the periphery, and that's fine, but we really don't say specifically who that might be. And if we started going within and say, who might that be? First of all, it's everyone, but it could be the elderly, it could be the youth, it could be the people that have left the church because they've given up on the parish structure. It could be someone who was offended. It could be any group or any one single person. And you're right. He said, I showed y'all how to listen. Now we're going to practice it together. The whole church, not just the bishops. And if I can help you encounter Christ in each other, this chasm we see in the church today, this chasm we see really in almost any institution, will start to disappear. It's never going to totally disappear, I don't think, but it's going to start to melt away by that act of listening for Christ in that other person.
You know, one of the things I've learned as a pastor and as a bishop is that everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a take on how things are and how they wish they were.
Yes.
And so you would think that we would not be short-handed on the number of people out there who have something to say. And you mentioned a number of groups out there that I'm very concerned about. I'm very concerned about our youth. When I go from church to church, whether it's confirmation or it's a school mass or whatever, the thing I notice is that there's a void out there in the congregation, and the void will be different things in different places. Mm-hmm. It may be the young people at Sunday Mass. Yeah. You look out there and say, "Where are the young people?" Yeah. Or you look out there and you say, there's a void in terms of people of color out there. Yeah. And then, of course, as a pastor, I'm aware that there's a whole list of groups of people that would love to have a voice in the church if you gave them the opportunity. Yes. Yes. Has that been your experience?
Well, it is, and I think we all want to tell our story. And I think that's where our opinions come from our own lived experience. And there's really nothing wrong with that. But if I can give you that opinion as a Christ-encountered relationship, then it's going to be given in a way of love. And it's probably going to be received in a way of love. And I think that's what Pope Francis is trying to say. And it's going to be messy. It's things are going to come up that have been pushed down in people maybe for a long time. And we have to know how to hear that. And it may go nowhere, but the fact that somebody listened is the first step. Yeah.
I was in a meeting last week with some priests, and in the group, I was eager to hear from them about how the church is living its mission in various parts of the diocese, and it was clear that one of the priests was angry. And he was angry because of certain things in the church. Probably a lot of those things were related to the COVID and restrictions and so forth, but it's difficult, and I think that's a big challenge in this listening process, to listen to people that they have an agenda, and you wonder if they're willing to listen too.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not bashful about talking, but I wonder if I'm convicted of what I'm saying, are these people actually listening to that? Especially if I'm convicted that this is gospel truth.
Yes. And so, and you remind me, when Pope Benedict was first elected, he asked leaders of other denominations and other religions to come to the Vatican for dialogue. And his definition, and I'm paraphrasing, but the definition there of dialogue was, I'm going to spend all my energy listening to you and trying to understand, and I'm asking you to spend all of your energy listening to me and trying to understand. And I don't think we know how to do that. We're taught to speak over the other person, be thinking of what you're going to say next, especially in America we are. And I think that one of the exciting parts about this idea of synodality, it's not some skill we're going to try to learn and then check it off a box. It's say, how can I live this? And so with the Synod of 2023, after all of this listening is correlated and sent to American bishops and then worldwide bishops for the Synod after that will go through another listening process, but we're all going to be better at it. And then the one after that, we're going to be better again. To me, it's kind of like living our faith. We talk about that phrase, living our faith. How do we live sacramentally? Well, the sacraments for us, one of our greatest gifts, are encounters with Christ. So if I can live sacramentally in the church, can I take that out and live it outside? Whether it's at work, whether it's at play, whether it's at the grocery store, whether it's in some ministry to the poor or the outcast or whoever it may be, whether it's just at the coffee shop. And I can listen with all my intensity and try to understand. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you. It's real interesting. I heard two people the other day, and one of them was a self-professed, she said, within the church, I'm a liberal or progressive. And the other one said, well, I'm conservative. And they looked at each other and said, but we love each other, because they've had this relationship all these years. And it's, can we do that with people we don't have a relationship yet?
I wonder about how difficult that process actually is going to be, because when people have been invited to a listening session, I think there's probably a certain expectation on their part that not only are you going to listen to me, but you're going to do what I say.
Yeah.
And I have an opinion, and I want my opinion to be your opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's probably just a part of the human personality and the human persona to do that. Say, if you want me to say something, if you want me to share something with you, so that the church can reform itself, or the church can be better, my expectation is that you're not going to dismiss me.
Yes.
Or my words,
yes.
And then you're going to do something with what I had to say.
Yes.
And I think that's where one of the biggest challenges of synodality is about, even on the level of the bishops. when they get together, what's that going to be like?
Yeah.
And especially because they come from all parts of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to anticipate that, as you mentioned earlier, it's messy and it's not going to be easy, but the process is worth the messiness, and the process is worth getting to the point where you say, I may not agree with you, but I'm listening to you and I hear what you say, because you never know, it may change minds.
Yes.
It may change
Yes.
opinions.
Yeah.
And I would love for that messiness to be sort of ameliorated, during this synod process, especially as it affects our own diocese. That I want people to be able to come forth and say, well, this is how I feel, or this is how I think about this, and then be able to answer them in a way that they know they were heard. I may not agree with you, or I may have a different approach, but you were heard.
You were heard, and what you shared with us is going to be sent to the bishops.
Yes.
Yeah. And so two things happen when I listen. Internally, there is a reaction, which is not the response. It's a reaction. I might get excited. I might go, ooh, that's uncomfortable. I might go, he's totally out of his mind. That's what happens first, that internal movement. And then my response then can be what you just said. I've heard you. I've listened. I even want to think about that. And I should. And I do. And I promise we're going to take that now and give it to our bishop, the Bishop of Shreveport, you, and then it's going to go to the U.S. bishops and eventually to the worldwide bishops. And none of us know the outcome of that, but that's not what we're after. We're after the synod on synodality. How did we do in listening to each other? I think it's going to be very difficult. And I would say to people right away is expect it to be difficult, maybe uncomfortable, and expect that you're not going to get a right or wrong response right now. It's, I had the opportunity to be heard in a loving setting, in a non-judgmental setting, and I think that we have to make that our boundary. These are non-judgmental listening sessions.
And people should be advised, if maybe there's a better word, but advised on the front end of this, that the response that we want to give to you is not going to be immediate.
Exactly. Yes.
Because
yes.
a lot of people say, "Well, I'm convicted of this, and I want an answer to this right now," and that's not what this is about.
Right.
But the immediacy of the process of listening and surfacing the concerns of people and their thoughts and their own theology, their own ecclesiology, and then what is going to happen, we can almost bank on it, is that if this process deepens, then certain issues in the church are going to also surface.
Yes.
And so from same-sex unions to the church's annulment process, people who are no longer able to receive communion because of a previous marriage. There's going to be liturgy, less and less as time goes on, but there's going to be a certain number of people who will remember the Latin Mass, or who discover the Latin Mass in recent years, and will want that.
Yes.
So there be all these different issues that are going to be raised. That this person here, this is a hot topic for them, but it's not for this person over here.
Correct.
And this person over here needs to hear that there are other issues other than the issues that they have.
Yeah. And so I think you saying that is in Luke's gospel, the rich young man. It's either in chapter 17 or 18, but the rich young man says this thing, and it says, and Jesus loved him.
Yeah.
He knew he was about to tell him what he didn't want to hear.
Right.
That was going to be his response. But his reaction was one of love.
Yeah.
And if we can just remember that this first go around, I think we're a step further than maybe we've been in a long time, maybe ever.
And I've had that experience. I've had the experience of being in a group, whether it was other seminarians or brother priests or brother bishops, and you're voicing your opinion, and the sense you get from having voiced your opinion on that is that those who are listening to you are not sitting there going, "That's just crazy."
Yeah.
They're saying, "I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I understand what you're saying,"
Yeah.
and that could segue into other topics.
And if we don't understand what they're saying, it's okay to say, "I think I hear you saying this. Is that correct, or would you say it differently?" Yeah. I mean, I think we have to get that understanding that I really did hear you.
Yeah.
Not just I can repeat what you said.
Yeah. And things have changed in the church so much over the past 20, 30 years that the response of people today is going to be much different than it was 20 or 30 years ago.
Yes.
And the level of acceptability for certain lifestyles, while not ever agreeing that something which is sinful is okay, but rather saying, I have a greater appreciation for what you're going through because you've discovered that your son or your daughter is homosexual.
Yeah.
Or I understand that there's some people at the table that can't receive communion because of a outstanding marriage issue. And just to hear that and to appreciate that wipes away a previous kind of concept and response, which was, well, they made these promises, and they should follow those promises, and they realize that there's consequences to these. Well, when you do that, you simply dismiss a whole group of people, and that's the exact opposite of what synodality is.
Yeah. And if you go back, what is it now? 8-9 years. This idea of being merciful, and I'm not talking about forgiveness so much here, is compassion. Can I show my compassion? Because the person is going through pain, they're going through agony, they're going through discomfort, because they do want to be in full communion, say, if that's what it is, with the church. They love the church. And these are times to wrestle with that. But if we can say, I compassionately hear you, we're moving in a Christ-like direction.
Not only that, but if we can get into the groups, this notion that I hear what you're saying, and it's different from what I used to think, but I'm willing to journey with you.
Yes, indeed.
I'm just willing to journey with you, and after our meeting today, perhaps an opportunity for us to go get a cup of coffee and talk about this and say I empathize with what you're going through, because I know as a confessor, very often when people come to confession, especially older people, they're troubled and they're hurt, and the reason why they are is for things that can be resolved. For example, my son or my daughter no longer practice their faith. My son or my daughter, they married outside the church, and I said, well, what's been your response to them so far? Well, I'll have nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
I'll have nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
And eventually, in most groups of people who are really talking in a synod-like setting, eventually you're going to have someone say, well, is that working?
Yeah.
And you say, no, it's not working, you know.
Yeah.
And so when I look out at the congregation, when I was pastor, I could look at all these different people and say, this family is hurting, and this family is upset, and this family has a crisis going on, and that came to the light when they were able to share that, whether it was in a group setting like we're trying to do with synodality, or with private conversations
Yeah.
And then, but to get people to say, I'm willing to journey with that person
Yeah.
because maybe that person's been there and understands.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about discipleship. We talk about evangelization, and it really is, I want to walk with you.
Yeah.
I love you enough to walk with you. And that's what Synod means, is to walk with the other. And so what I hope for is this ability to look another person in the eye, to listen to what they say, and to say we care.
Well, as a bishop, I'm concerned about how we get this started. And when I've talked to various priests in the diocese, I said, we got this word out to you some 6 months ago. So how's it going? How's it working? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think one of the things is it's different. One of the things is we know beforehand it's going to be messy. We'll use that word. It's going to cause some struggle for a lot of us, I think. And so we just continue to lovingly give this message that we're inviting you in a holistic way to be part of the church. We're not developing a Congress or a parliament where you're going to get a vote. That's not the point. We're inviting you to tell us, how do you encounter Christ in the church today? What was the last time you really had an experience with God that you want to share with us? Or when was the last time you thought maybe it should have been an experience, but it wasn't? And then we want to hold that with you. So if you're young, if you have maybe given up on the parish life or the liturgy or the sacraments, this is a special personal invitation to come join us in these sessions. And you might, I hope you don't, but you might feel like an outsider at first. But we want to hear your stories. We want to hear what's in your heart. And that's not just the youth by any means. It's the lonely person who's older than me and you even, and just needs that Catholic companionship and doesn't know where to find it.
I know a number of years ago, not too long ago, I was wanting to, as a pastor, establish a program of adult faith formation. And so to begin, what I did was we invited maybe 150 people. And these were the people that were the diehards. Some of them were on the periphery, but most of them were the diehards. And we asked them two questions for their discussion, and then for their ruminating about it, and also for their writing it down.
Yeah.
Well, the first question: when was the church really church for me? Yeah. What great experience do I recall of church? Mm-hmm. Well, it could have been anything. But,
yes.
And then, secondly, when was the church absent? A simple thing, I think I've used the expression. Grandma was sick in the hospital and no one came to see her. Yeah. That the sermons in our church seem to be too close to home, but they're hurtful. So when was the church not listening, and when was the church not doing what you're asking us to do in this synodal process?
Yeah. And I think as we think of those questions before we attend a listening session, to do some soul searching and to be specific. And maybe there's something you don't want to share, but at least you're allowing yourself to have a discussion with God about it.
And not only that, Mike, but also you have to, as a pastor or as a bishop, you have to be willing to hear something that you may not want to hear.
Yeah.
And that can be hard. And and the people have to feel like they can say something that risks alienating them from other people in the room
Yeah.
or in their discussion. But what I want to say is that when we went through that process of when was the church really good for you and when was it not, the response was just out of the park. It was wonderful, and people felt just even individual responses afterwards. I just felt this was so healthy for me spiritually because someone asked me what I thought.
Yeah. And so I'm going to use a parallel with the sacrament of reconciliation. So often we don't want to go, but we know when we do, just that very short conversation about what's really on our heart, we walk out of there on the clouds.
Yeah.
You know, we walk out of there just filled with the Lord. I think this is the same thing. We all have to share our stories. And we need to.
How else would the church up the line know what's in someone's heart unless we do that?
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for this time, Mike, and for this sharing. It's certainly been helpful to me as a bishop to get the input of someone like yourself who's very engaged in the life of the church and also in spiritual direction, and it really goes to the heart of it's easy to ask people what's going on up here, but when you ask them what's going on in the heart, that opens up a whole different area of their life, and hopefully will benefit the whole synodal process. So thank you for this time.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Good.